Okay, I'm starting at today's community meetup. Community meetup's a pretty informal thing where you just hang out here, and anybody in the community is welcome to come and join, ask questions, find out more about what's happening with Curvenote, what we're working on. Everyone's busy, so I'm just happy to be here and let people drop in whenever. While that's all happening, I'm actually sharing the wrong screen. I'm actually going to share desktop too. Which is really not happy about sharing the right screen, is it? I want to share desktop too. Cool. I think that makes sense now. All right, I was just playing around here, creating a bit of a small article with some text in. Also a figure, because one of the things we've been working on a lot recently is the integration with their LaTeX rendering. So our API allows us to retrieve any block, any document, so article or notebook, as LaTeX. So we actually let you export that as LaTeX, and using our CLI previously, you were able to use Python code or our Python-based CLI to go and pull an entire document out as LaTeX. When you did that, you got a local working folder, sort of with the LaTeX project that had a sort of index text file, had a text file with your content, and also it localized all your assets related to the article. So it would pull your images down locally, it would pull your Jupyter output down locally, and it would build the file referencing, build a local LaTeX file referencing all of that with appropriate relative links. And then you'd be able to customize that, add a template class, and build that. So what actually happened, what needs to happen next is that you don't have to rely on the API. And one of the things we're doing is extending this button here. So this button here at the moment will just let me download this notebook as is, as an IPy.mb file. But now we've started adding the download here to articles as well, which is the first thing we're targeting. And there we can download as LaTeX, or we can download as PDF. Now I'm just actually running on localhost at the moment, and because our LaTeX job uses cloud infrastructure, that's not going to work if I hit that button locally. So I'll demonstrate that where we're up to on that in a minute. But the idea is you can download PDF, download LaTeX for a specific version of your paper. So that's going to download on a particular version. And the build times on that can maybe be lengthy if you have a large article. So what we're doing is once you've built it once, we cache it. And then this will tell you here with a little tick that it's already processed, and then the subsequent downloads will be faster. So I'm just going to save a version of this. And then I can use this for testing shortly. And here's just Rowan joining me. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Welcome. We're currently recording already because I was going through some things.
Seismic paper.
Yeah, I'm just setting up something a bit better for the LaTeX testing.
Sweet.
On dev, of course.
Yep. Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Can you show me the zip file download? Haha.
I'm going to show it now. Yeah, let me show it now. Let's see.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was working, and it works with simple. It'll work with this. Let's see. Hi, Wesley.
Hey guys.
Good. We're just live demoing in progress
It's nice to have you show up, Wesley.
stuff.
I feel yeah, there's always a lot of people in here.
Yeah.
It's like I usually catch up with Steve at this time, and so this is at least a good chance to like catch up with you as well.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, we previously had this download button on notebooks, which just kicked off the download of the IPy notebook file straight away. Now, I can hit this download as LaTeX. That is going to set off a job to build LaTeX in the cloud, and should give me a zip file in a couple of seconds. Yay. Cool. So what I'm working on right now is the PDF. I'm building PDF builder containers as we speak and battling with tiny text, the TL text package manager, and pulling that all into a Docker image that works. So I'm going through that and debugging which packages we need.
What does the zip file look like at the moment?
Let's have a look at the zip file. So that's 1 megabyte. It's currently named with the ID. So what we have here is we have an assets folder with my image in it. The image has been given a local name based on its ID, and then that should be referenced. Open with. Where's VS Code? That's the only thing I want to edit anything with. Let's try text edit.
That's
Okay,
terrible.
Yeah. Well, and there's the very simple bit of LaTeX.
Is there a class file that is also that's included in?
Yes.
Or,
so that is the
actually.
content.
Right.
Yeah, and that is and this is the main file.
And then just include. Cool.
Yeah. So by default, it's going to try and spit out a bibliography with any references at the end when it runs the PDF.
And the assets are in the bib file would be in the assets folder?
I think the bib file might be in the root next to text, but I'd have to check.
That's super cool.
You can push it right out and try. Do I have a DOI from my? Here we go. Curvenote.com. Hi, Liz.
Good morning. Sorry, it's early, as usual.
Okay. I think I've got a relevant DOI down here. Here we go. Crystalliner. Let's see if Crossref is back up. Oh, it might be.
Phase.
Yeah. Chris Steiner's a great guy. I went to his EEG disc course years ago. Very good. What's the stuff on phase and time frequency transforms? Right, let's give that a go then. So now we're on version 3. this doesn't say anything. By the way, let me just pop back, and if I pop back to version 2 now, this,
like it saves.
yeah, this knows it's already processed, and then this should be near instant. Yeah, cool.
It's fantastic.
But now we're going to have to ask for it again, which will take a few seconds more. You will be able to browse away from the page and come and go off and do other stuff. Say if you've got one that takes a little bit while, if you lose your tab, I think you'll be able to browse away. It'll process in the background and you'll get a notification.
That's super cool.
Assets, images, documents. Huh. Yeah, so where's that bib file?
Maybe look at your 0. Yeah, anyways, that's cool.
Bibliography main. Bib file has to be pulled in somewhere, no? Right, interesting. Yeah, I had to figure that out. Let me go off to one I baked earlier. And for example, when I pulled out Lindsay's, here's main.bib sitting at the top level there. So I expected main.bib to be there.
Yep.
So that's something to debug.
That's cool.
Maybe a difference between the CLI, because the Cloud Functions actually use our Python interface. They don't actually run the CLI interface. So there's maybe CLI does an extra step to write out the file that we've missed in the Cloud Function.
Great.
Cool.
That's cool. Everything's going with you, Wesley.
Curvenote wise, I haven't touched it in ages. Sorry to say, but apart from that.
What else are you up to? Are you still, is your day job still taking you down interactive plotting route, or not really?
Can't remember where I left off last time. Interactive plotting has been less. At the moment, it's been compiling a bunch of Fortran code into Docker containers, which is painful, seeing as it's all written for Intel and not for G-Fortran. So big pains there with converting this stuff. I don't know, like since last time I talked, I've implemented a messaging queue to handle all my distributed tasks inside my app. So like now I just send messages everywhere between all my Docker containers, and it just gets a load of workers to do stuff in the background. So I'm pretty pleased with that setup. But I mean, again, it's nothing to do with interactive plotting or Curvenote. But I mean, yeah, it works quite nicely. So I mean, you got your UI, and then when you click on something in the UI, it fires off a signal to my messaging queues, which then different Docker containers picks up the tasks that need to be completed. And when they're finished, is they send a message back saying I finished, and then you can start chaining stuff together. So like you can keep everything always up to date with all the processing queues. So that's what I've done. It was kind of very heavily inspired by Leapfrog, but
yeah.
Okay. And that's like internal systems for your group. Then you're building internal tools for your group.
Oh, it's all on GitHub. We're building a tool. It's open source, so at the moment it's to create boundary conditions for the IPSL model. IPSL being something Institute Pierre and Marie Curie or something like that. And it's just an earth science model. And they need to edit a bunch of files and create all these files beforehand, which is all written in scripts. And the funny thing is like they read it all in Fortran, but they, rather than giving it like command line parameters, is they recompile, like they change the parameters in the Fortran file and recompile everything all the time. It seems just a lot. Yeah, it seemed horrible. So So, but no one like really knows. Like these scripts are written by people that sort of know half how to code, half not, and then like you end up with recompiling just because you want to change your variable name.
Yeah.
So,
Or change your
Yeah,
variable. Yeah, not just the name. That's funny.
yeah.
Cool.
Nothing interactive recently, but yeah. Trying to think. We did look at trying to do PyVista briefly, getting streamlines working, but that seemed really painful as well, especially seeing as it wasn't too easy, and I didn't spend too much time on it.
Like from a full interactive point of view, or from just using it in Jupyter?
Oh no, to embed it into. I mean, you can embed it sort of, but there's no like the interface to it is you've got to go down into a really granular level to create like the objects. You're always pretty much like if you want to create a mesh, you're passing everything to it. Whereas like, well, you're reconstructing the triangles. Whereas like with other libraries I've been using recently, is you've at least got some sort of higher API that you can use to do things quicker. So
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't put too much work into that, but yeah, it's like.
That's super cool.
Cool.
They also had people coming out today talking, trying to get Overleaf Pro license, and I was like, just try. I tried to push Curvenote again. I don't know where it would go, but
I feel like we're getting to the stage, hopefully in the next month or so, where we'll start to be competitive with Overleaf and start to actually having some of those like all of the output files and template classes and collaborative editing and all of those things. So hopefully
PDF preview,
yeah,
as well as PDF output. And yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that day where we can compete on that side.
So what else has been happening? I mean, last week was pretty good Curvenote wise in terms of transform, because we had a bunch of people actually using it and sharing their content. So up on the Swung team now, there's a few. Sort of Soggy put his inversion for geologist up there. There's Matteo's notebooks on Pylops inversion, as well as the geothermal notebooks that Irene did. I think another couple of people used it as well. I think Olawale, who did the machine learning talk, definitely used it. And I think they've put things on their profile rather than sharing it here. And Miguel as well for the GemPy team. And that's what prompted us to, or helped give us a use case to optimize the performance of it. I've changed this thing this morning as well. I really disliked fetching the document. Not just because it wasn't fetching the document exactly, but also just didn't like that. So this notebook is actually huge. So we've still got some optimization to do in terms of the initial call to fetch the notebook structure. Still takes around 12 or 13 seconds for that one, because it's a big one. There's 200 cells in total. But then it starts rendering, and it still takes a bit of time, but now we have, of course, the progress bar, and the browser stays nice and responsive, and we can look down and watch outputs as they come in. So that was a good step.
GemPy have 3D working inside Curvenote, or?
No, that's all. Well, all this stuff's 2D plots.
Okay.
I haven't looked at any of their 3D. I don't know if they rely on PyVista, maybe.
I think they do. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So I think that'll be the same. But that's good now that, I mean, this still takes in its entirety time to load, but at least it will eventually. And it's a huge notebook that GitHub would never render.
Yeah.
And unless you go down the MB convert route yourself and create your own HTML off it and do that every time it updates, then you're not going to be able to share this otherwise. So that was cool to see some editing, see some usage, and to get performance moved on a bit. There's the new equations as well, which Liz knows very well. And I don't know if you've seen Wesley, but Rowan.
Try to stay clear of equations.
Okay.
just Fortran.
Just in general.
These are much safer. So, it's a good time if you need to use them. These are much better. So.
Yeah. They can now go in call outs as of this morning. I don't know if you caught that one, Liz. But also, Rowan completely changed the way and implanted the editor into the document, basically, rather than it being a popover, and made some lovely changes to how it's rendered while you're editing, and changed the style of the equation rendering as well, which makes a big difference. Because previously we had funny shaped brackets or things not quite lined up.
Do you want to show the equation index? Well, I don't know if Liz, you want to show it, or Steve, you want to bring it up? Because I think that's actually like.
I think let Liz, because I don't know where it is. So I'm going to let Liz share.
Sure. Let's see if I can.
The co-host. Just while Liz is busy with that, Rowan, previously we had issues rendering the alignment. Do you know when we bring in a LaTeX and we have like an equation aligned, or three equations aligned?
Yeah, I think.
Do you think that should work now?
One part of that was, I think, the styling, and that piece should be updated. The other piece is we're still not picking up from the Jupyter Markdown, sort of when people just say equation aligned, or begin align rather. That triggers something in the MathJax side of things in Jupyter Lab, but doesn't yet on our side.
Okay, so that, and we haven't addressed that with this recent change.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Anyway, I don't know. Last week, yeah, that was last week. I don't know what day it is. Just kind of pulled out all the equations from at least the first chapter here. I haven't gotten through the rest of it, just doing other things. But basically, it's just an index that links all the blocks. And so it does have an equation and then an aside, which has essentially just a little description, which folks actually seem to like, which is nice too if you're referencing things. So this brings up then a question: can I put a block inside of a call out? Because if you want equations to be a block on their own, and you also would want to copy them in, that's a random question.
Oh, write it down. Yeah, I think
I'm just going to break the entire logic.
I think one of the ways that we might do that is that, like, you still just have your block in the article specifically, but we can style around it and say, make this look like a call out.
Yeah. Like, oh, I want this in here, but yeah, pretend it's in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so these are all in here, which is nice because there's been times, basically we decided that we're going to keep like everything in chapter 1 is 1 point something, but sometimes they come up in later chapters. Then I can just copy out the block and paste it in there to like a later chapter if we want to see it, and just leave it named the same. So, and folks can just go through all these. So.
Yeah, because that's typical numbering, isn't it? The equation will be given the number based on the first section it appears in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's definitely some of these that are used again. So I was debating on doing something similar with figures, only because they're going to have that same numbering system, and some of them are used again, but I don't know. It's like equations make sense to have in an index, figures not necessarily. So that was just yeah.
Yeah. Well, so this has definitely inspired some of my thinking, and I spent 2 nights ago diving deep into what we wanted equations to look like in the future. Maybe or do you have anything else to share on this, Liz?
I mean, this is what it is now. I guess there's stuff like it would definitely be nice to like search in here, or I definitely feel like for this one, that button that says like get newest or get most recent version would be the best, because sometimes I'll edit these here or I'll edit them in the document. So just having that, this is like the first time I really was like, God, I wish I could just press that button.
Yeah.
Because every time I renamed them or like went into their description, so the blocks had all that information, it was like, oh, cool. Now I got to update everything in the next document so it has all that information too. So
yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, I'm just glad it's helping folks because it helped me. So
Cool.
Yeah, I've definitely been, well, seeing the idea of an equation description is definitely, it's not something that's really traditional, I guess, and I quite like that side of things. It's like embedding that information and metadata directly with the equation, and then showing it in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. Like I put that in, like knowing you guys had talked about putting in like, or having the description for figures or equations be like their captions. I did like go ahead and copy that into the description just to have it in case something ever happened to the aside, because there's obviously a lot of collaborators. And so just that was there in case anyone's like, what is this?
Oh, so it is actually in the description as well in the block. Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So I named it like based on the equation, and then the link is similar. And then I just copied in just the text, not like equation number, because that changes every once in a while.
Yep.
Which is a joy.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll fix that up in the future.
You're fine. You're fine.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, because exactly that's what everyone's been thinking about this specifically, and the wider captions on and numbering off, because that includes images, outputs, as you know, or figures in general, which I guess can come from images and outputs, and equations. Do you want to say anything else to that, Rowan?
Yeah, I might share my. Everybody's sharing the screen.
Yeah, I can stop sharing. Oh. Yeah.
It definitely is a good point, because like right now, all of my figures, if they're just images that have been pulled in, I have the aside in the same box with the caption. But if they're from somewhere else, I have to have another block underneath it with the aside in it, like if they're from a Jupyter notebook. So it looks.
Yeah, and that's definitely where we want to go.
Not terrible, but a little funny. So.
Yeah. So on the equation side of things, I've definitely been thinking about sort of like what the next generation of sort of equations look like, and it's like having embedded annotations and being more than just like just an equation on the screen. Also, like basically after every equation in a paper, there's some enumeration of what the variables actually mean, and that information should, I think, really live with the equation, such that you have some way to like call out what different parts are. And what I think is actually kind of interesting about that is if we bake that in and provide an interface for people to actually create those things, you can like hover over things in the text and actually have them show up. So like, for example, I don't know, this physics paper, they describe bits and pieces, they break it down, and these things like hovering over something could like show you where in the paper and in the equations those parts are actually showing up to help with the explanation. And something that really hasn't been thought about, I don't think, because like everything is designed for paper, and so baking in hover and sort of that interactivity really isn't there at all. I'm not sure if this gets you guys thinking about anything.
I think that would be amazing, especially to have like my descriptions and captions already have like the definitions in them, but to have like a some sort of field where you can just say, okay, this variable belongs to this, like here's what it is, and just have that in there to reference or somehow show that to people.
Yeah.
And in regards to the little like kind of thing you had with annotations, that'd be almost a way to like open the block somewhere else and maybe get more information. That would be a cool way to like, maybe, I don't know, somehow have an option to be like, see annotated version if you want to like understand more or something like that. Especially like teaching tools, I could see people opening that up and then going, you know, okay, here's some other ideas.
Yeah, totally.
One of the things we use all the time in a coding IDE, like in Visual Studio Code, is go to definition, find all usages or find all references as well. So that sort of thing, right? Where's this used in the whole paper? So you've got the highlight when you can see it, but you know, you could also pop out and you could also see page 14. There's a reference there, and actually go and jump. So it gives you a different way to navigate your paper.
Yep.
Which you often do, no? I mean,
yeah.
Anyway, you read down at the bottom, then you know, constantly up, back, down, trying to figure out. So, yeah, being able to navigate via the maths is really good.
I wonder if in like addition to like, so you could hover over something and see it, but say you want to like hold on to that on the side while you're like, okay, I want to go back and read this stuff over here. Maybe some sort of little like pop out that you could keep that had its own little X that you could be like, what was the definition of that again? While I read the text about it, that'd be cool.
I think you mentioned that on one of the suggestion channels of, especially like, for example, like this equation 1 piece completely out of context, you should be able to hover over it and actually see the actual equation. And so that's also definitely what I've been thinking about this week when we're starting to bring some of those equation referencing in.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool.
But yeah, definitely like keeping some of that information would be great.
Yeah, it's like letting somebody build up just keep the mental model that they're building as they pass the document, just to keep that visible. Or
yeah, just with like a little X, you could get rid of it.
Kind of like the
pop up.
Go ahead, Wesley.
I was going to say, like in Jupyter Lab, you've got the new view, new output for cell. I think it's one of the things that not many people uses, but I mean, that kind of pops out the cell to the side for you in a new tab that updates and everything as you go through. So that could be kind of like, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like that's
one way of doing it.
Yeah, totally a cool concept of just like bringing contextual information and having it linked back and forth. And I think the Jupyter side of things especially is actually a view on your like widgets. And so you can execute state on the left-hand side of your screen and then update it on the right-hand side or something, which is super cool. Yeah, I don't know if I was thinking about anything else. Oh, I was also thinking that like, well, I was surfing around on archive and just like looking at random papers in astrophysics and all sorts of things that I don't know anything about. And man, they use like there's acronyms everywhere to the point of like people actually, I don't know if I actually put it in here, but like 3 pages of acronyms that they used in the paper. And it's just like a PDF with capital letters in it, basically. And it's completely inaccessible to anyone.
So it's else. Like imagine DFT or that type of acronym where it's
yeah, exactly. But super specialized in their domain. And I was also thinking in the equation lens is being able to like hover over something and actually seeing alt text about what those symbols actually mean, and just like baking in more and more information, which I think if we did it from this perspective and actually saying this part of the equation is actually the same as this green thing over here, that alt text can flow and be updated in one place like a variable in programming.
Is that thing then a glossary more than anything else? Something that says DFT means discrete Fourier transform, or rho typically means density, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it actually gets to. And like, this is the really cool thing that I've seen in like Liz's evolution is she started in just having them in an article, but then suddenly there's an extra bit of investment that she's putting in bringing them into a equation bank. And then that equation bank has value in other places. And like, I think that is only possible if you have the ability to import, because you can actually improve it over time. And those improvements are shared over a number of places. I don't know if that quite answered your question, your thoughts.
I think this would be good too. Like if you can define which ones you want, because then you don't have to spend the time maybe putting in the LaTeX again. If you can somehow like copy it in or just like have a little drop down, because the number of times we all mess up that stuff for just the fact that like I spent way too much time just learning how to tech equations. Like it's another language and I speak it. I don't know how, but.
Yeah, no, I definitely, the first year of my master's and PhD, I was definitely fighting with LaTeX pretty heavily.
So I think something else that might be, it's kind of definitely at the end, but it's something interesting, is that a lot of times you're in the same realm of a paper, the same industry, whatever, but certain things are defined differently. Like the number of times we define different, like even just, God, I can't even think of equations right now. Like an objective function that is, say you have like big phi or little phi, something like that, just that you could maybe go out and look at other ways it's defined. So in case you're like reading it, you're like, what is this? Is this different? You're like, no. You may have seen it like this. Maybe, I don't know, just like a field like that. That would be, again, like the last thing, but so many people have their own ways of doing things, or they have to change variables because something else demands that they use that same variable.
Yeah, I think that's like totally cool, because it is like a little bit of a user preference side of things, of like how you would like to see this equation. And that is, again, only possible if you're actually substituting variables out and actually changing the display of them, and like conductivity for resistivity or something like that. Which I think that's the farther out dream of when these things are actually connected, invested in, and then you can start actually pulling, like, well, changing how they are viewed, and having some of that standardization leak across multiple fields or multiple different ways of talking of the same field.
Yeah. But I mean, I think just having like an option in there with the content and just saying like, hey, are there other ways this might be defined? Because it allows the reader to get that information, and it also makes the authors, you know, try a little harder, maybe look at some other stuff and go, oh, how should I be defining it? But, you know, help out their reader. So.
Yep, totally.
Just
you guys could have like a bank of generic equations. I mean, there's a certain amount of equations that, could be written in different forms, but are not new in any way. So you can choose your equation line, the Bernoulli equation, or maybe it's Stokes or something like that, and then you put it in and then choose your form. And then after that as well is like, you guys can do analytics on how things are used most to propose the intelligent form of which equation should be used, like how you should write it, I guess. But
yeah, I think that's like, it's just totally cool.
I feel like that could be like a master's degree in machine learning, go through every paper ever, and try and figure out how things are used and defined. I don't know. Maybe it's PhD at this rate.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. It's a lot of stuff. I'm not doing it. God, no. No more school.
I feel like
find a kid, sponsor them, make them do it for you.
Yeah. There will likely be a time, well, hopefully in the future, where we're actually importing things like archive and other papers into this and actually starting to rip them apart and present them in these different ways. Yeah. Yeah, so that's sort of what I've been thinking about for the last little bit, thinking a little bit about numbering as well.
Because are there any fundamental representations of an equation that is detached from the symbology? No. I mean, even LaTeX, it's not.
SymPy?
Hmm?
SymPy? Well, like there's a computational representation as well, and that's also something that, like, as we evolve towards that side of things, suddenly these get, well, I don't know, interesting a little bit in that sense. I want to show you one other thing that I discovered that we can do.
Unknown feature.
Yeah, it's something that I thought about ages ago and like wrote the schema for, but didn't actually. In updating the equations, it now actually works. So you can do these sorts of variables and have sliders on that change the variables, and then you can show that number. But what is sort of interesting as well, and it doesn't completely work, but well, we want to say 38 or whatever, and then have that actually update to that number, and it almost works. So it comes that way, but it doesn't actually render all the way through. But this was also something that I was surprised even that number can exist inside of the equation. And then this also allows you to well, have equations that are dynamically linked to the text, and it's not that hard to actually bring these things inside.
How did you get it in there? Because I missed that. You were too fast.
I pasted it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, none of our oh, there it is. Our shortcuts work at the moment in terms of the slash commands and that side of things inside of this piece, but we could pretty easily enable those as well. So that was also something that, like, maybe this is sort of a similar way of working with those pieces, is that's actually like a chunk of LaTeX that is a variable that is actually connected directly to other bits in the text so that they're all linked together.
You think at the moment, if there's a way to insert the X, you'd be able to actually insert the X here and have AX equals Y. Produce Y.
Yeah.
If there was a way to actually just insert the component.
Yeah, and then actually show it in like a nice equation inside of a fraction, inside of a square root, so that people actually can, well, show substitutions of things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Random thought while we're on equations. Is there a way to switch an equation from inline to on its own?
Not easily.
Okay, just making sure that there wasn't something I was missing, because Doug has asked like so many times, and I'm just like, honey, it's okay, I'll just fix it. But yeah, so just making sure that, again, I'm not missing something. But random thought while we're fixing things, that's something I know he's like desperately would love. Probably because, like, depending on how people put stuff together, like, basically I made all these equations at the beginning, and then he's trying to move them around to how he wants them, which is either on their own or inside that. So I don't know.
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's not really an easy way to do that at the moment. I think that definitely is something we'll add.
Both ways.
Both ways, yeah.
You think, yeah.
Yeah, I think where this is going is having, so we have this sort of equation. We will need some settings over here in terms of dealing with numbering, and that's probably where we can add that sort of toggle option.
Yeah.
Cool.
Super cool.
Well, that's all I had in terms of things that are going on.
Maybe one other thing that I'm struggling with, especially seeing the numbering that Liz you've done, is what is the number of something if it lives in a different place? So it lives outside.
Oh.
That isn't, and so I think this is something that like totally breaks our paper mental model of everything is linear and ordered.
That'd be an X.
Just equation X.
An X, like the things that come after the paper, the annexes.
Oh, appendix.
Appendix or appendix.
Sorry,
yeah.
French. French coming in.
I was like, wait, how is my brain doing this? It is 7:48 a.m. and the coffee's not even gone yet.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Because where else could it live, Ruin? And some other document.
In someone else's report. So like if I'm using some of Liz's equations in my documents, and I'm just referencing it. It's not actually included in my text.
Properly dereferenced to that document.
It's properly what?
Then it should be properly dereferenced to that document. So
like Liz has called it 1.12 or 1.12, and I don't think that I get that number.
I don't think you should get that number though.
You think that
you shouldn't get, like, I mean, if you got the equation, well, equation 1.12 would work in your document if it happened to be the 12th in the first part or something. Like you wouldn't want something saying document,
But you would if you were referencing, no? Because you would say sort of, Cockett et al. Equation 3.2 states.
Okay.
I feel like there's like two different ways to think about this. So the first is that if you are making your own thing and it's not a part of like my project where I have something and you just want to use the equation, then you don't want that number. Like the number can come with it, but you're not going to use that number because you're putting it in there as part of your own paper. So it should get its own number in your paper. You could say, have a reference somewhere in there that then could click back like a link to say, oh, hey, this was actually over here originally, in case you want to check it out.
Yep.
But the other thought is like the way I've been using it is that if you're in, like, I guess since I've got it, like, okay, in this project, everything is named appropriately because it's where it started. So you want that number to come with it. And it shouldn't affect the numbering within a chapter because it already exists and it's a chapter before that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And you actually show the equation in line.
Yes. If it's in a separate chapter, I've been putting them in again, just because you're opening a whole nother article. And so it's there, you want to see it again. You could link back to it, but it's a lot of times it's better to just have it there, which is kind of the nice thing here, rather, because it's not just one paper, it's a book, I guess. I think about the inversion module as like its own textbook.
Yep.
In its own magical way.
Yeah, because I guess back to what Wesley was saying was, because traditionally you would maybe reference of where it came from, but then you would reproduce it
Yeah.
in your paper, and then that would get the flow numbering of your paper.
Yeah, and then
Traditionally.
that would get like a number 2.
Yeah.
Mm.
But unless it's in the same project, I guess. It depends like on how your project's set up.
I guess
Or
it
your
feels like
paper,
there should be
that makes
options
sense.
over that.
Yeah.
Because like I don't want to renumber mine because it's all one big book, whereas you do because it's a paper.
Yep.
This is going to require, I feel like, drawing a diagram somewhere for y'all.
Yep, totally.
You get it though. It's sort of like it's include or don't include in the numbering flow for my paper. But in any case, there's always a link out and a reference to where it originated from.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely store the ID. I guess it's like a little bit like hyperlinks, I guess, like have sidestepped this, whereas on like the explicit numbering schemes that paper is forcing on us requires you to, instead of refer to a figure by something that is maybe useful in terms of like in the wave equation, and then hover over it and it's a link and it shows the wave equation. Like I actually feel like that's probably the best way to reference is by a link and not a number, if that sort of makes sense. But it's certainly not the traditional way of how people think about it, because equations don't have names or descriptions or any of these other things on them.
Lots of interesting stuff. Imagine if it was a link and a link to an equation in another project, and imagine that sort of always pointed to the latest.
Yeah. Then
that could change in the other project. Well, the number could change if its position was changed, potentially.
Yeah.
The actual equation itself could be changed, and especially if we sort of do the unpinned reference that always takes the latest. So
you could do like the Git submodules where you specify a commit hash and then you update your commit hash when you're happy with it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably like how we would.
So when you hit publish, you could bake in the version numbers, potentially.
Or the equation numbers.
The equation numbers and the version, any specific version number as part of the link.
Yeah.
So you hit publish, and that was version 12 at that point. So it is for all time version 12.
Yeah.
But if you go to a latest draft, you can see the latest equation. Maybe there's some subtlety there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely feel like just in general, like pulling up, like when you copy blocks and different things like that, just having ways to, I don't know, and like you copy a link and then you paste it and you have like the version number there, but just having options somewhere that pop up and just say, which version do you want? Do you want the most recent? In general, that might be good. That just brought that back. Because again, I've still been like deleting the version. I'm like, no, I want the most recent. But sometimes you don't. Like sometimes you're like, no, I want this version, and dear God, if it changes, please don't throw my paper.
Yeah. No, you and Lindsay have both been saying that now for a bit, the sort of update to all latest. And we can see your pain now, Liz, now that you have the equation bank and 40 places to edit something.
Yeah.
I woke up at how early for this? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So definitely understand that.
Yeah.
Cool. And just typically on that, you've already decided that you're going to edit, so you're in edit mode. Update all.
Yeah.
A save. That's what you've got in your mind. Is it?
Yeah, like you would see whatever, but you'd, okay, so yeah, you would open edit mode, yeah, and then get most or get recent.
Yeah. And then check through,
Yeah.
save.
Yeah.
Ideally be notified or easy to see where things have been updated. There's little flags on them. And then save.
I was like, I won't say no if somebody tells me where the changes are,
Yeah,
or if somebody makes my life easier. By all means, yes, please.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Cool. This is really good discussion. I love using this time like this. Definitely. Yeah. It's brilliant. This is really helpful.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about thinking about things a little differently than how they've been done and what other affordances, like, I don't know, now that there's the internet, basically, instead of thinking about it.
Actually start using it.
Yeah, exactly.
But more than cat photos, etc. Yeah.
What?
Awesome.
How do you
more than not instead
photos?
of.
Yeah, more than,
yes.
Still need those. Yeah.
You guys should just make like an example with cat photos and videos and how to put them all in, and just see how to use the internet with Curvenote.
Yeah.
Great selling tool.
Cool.
But for real though, I was just gonna say, I think the equations like this will be a huge selling point, and it's just, it sets y'all apart. So
yeah,
nice. Excited. Cool. Well, thank you. Good to see you. And